Well, everyone, thank you so much for coming and being a part of our community and addictions. We are excited to bring another one. This today's topic focus has been one that we have been trying for a while, and again, we're really excited about this. We are joined today by Chastity, and did I get it right?
Chastity.
Chastity. I just spit names out when I try to pronounce it right. Sometimes I fail, and sometimes I do great. Um, so we're really thankful for this opportunity and to have her share with us and to ask questions and to hit some hard topics. Which, if you're listening to this, you know that's what we do all the time. Um, but we're excited about this, and this is gonna be really good. And so again, thank you for joining us. So just
Yes,
this,
I want to thank you also, Chastity, for doing this. Chastity, that's what I said, right? Or did I get it wrong too?
Yeah, you did.
Anyhow, I just,
I answered anything.
so grateful that you showed up. I know this is going to be a little bit difficult, but I just want you to know already that I'm proud that you are trying to put a message out there, and I hope that we can accommodate that.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. So the really fun part about today, to kind of get the good lead in, we've already kind of talked prior to all of this. Um, but in what ways for the audience to connect with you, for those who understand and know your heart and your passion? I guess the two questions that kind of go hand in hand with each other is what is your relationship with the nature of addictions, and then how has that impacted you and your family, and um, and if you can kind of explain that for us, and then let's kind of let the conversation just go from there if you're willing.
Sure. I guess addiction's been a part of my life my entire life. You know, growing up on top of a AA, my grandma ran in Stillwater, and my cousins and I would go running downstairs for pin night to get spaghetti. So that started young, and my grandma was a alcoholic and recovering. She was sober for a long period of time. I want to say like 50 years, and then my dad, my whole family kind of struggles with addiction, but I was never close to my dad. But then my daughter's dad, he was an alcoholic. So dealt with that, and that ended our relationship. He ended up passing away. And I think the biggest impact has obviously been my daughter, and she struggled with since she was 14 years old. So 10 years of her life, and addiction took her life. So that's how it's impacted me. And so I just want to make the message known, that she was still a person. She wasn't just an addict, and that's why I wrote the obituary and everything. So
Yeah, and I think that's what's really impactful about today again, and why you know it's in here if I can get it out the mouth. The reason why we like to have so many people on a panel and have these discussions is because there's the nature of addictions is so far reaching,
mm-hmm.
and it impacts it's more the level of impact is a lot greater than we think sometimes, and I think um what a community needs to hear sometimes too, and we've talked about this, and why we pursue this is to have a parent of an addict,
Mm-hmm.
um and to kind of hear that heart, and to really bring that focus in, is important. And so um, we're gonna put in the link. You can kind of see the photo here. If you're able to zoom in on the video, you can zoom in on the photo there. We're gonna post the link for the memoir, the obituary, for her daughter Ariel. Is going to be in the descriptions, and so we invite you to come take a look at those, and to read that, because it is important.
Mm-hmm.
It is important. So, um, yeah, go ahead, brother.
okay. So, when did this like what? When was this? When did this happen? When did she pass?
She passed on November 30th of 2023.
Okay, and so you said that she had actually found a little bit of recovery before this occurred.
She's probably been in treatment. I don't know if I can count how many times she's been in treatment, whether it's been in jail,
Mm-hmm.
um, or actually going to treatment. We actually tried sending her to Texas one time, thinking, get away
Yeah, that's
from,
okay.
you know.
Yep.
She ran away from that, and that was shortly after her dad passed away, and she had money, so she got a flight home. She's been to Hazleton a couple times. She was in the adolescent program, and then she went. I think she went twice. I think once as an adult and once as an adolescent. So she's been to several Rochester. So
Right.
jail several
Was it?
times.
I mean, okay. So, I don't want to ask questions that might be a little too intrusive, but I'm gonna ask them anyhow.
No, I welcome it
So,
because I think one of my issues I had. Sorry to interrupt you.
no,
That's what we do
that's
here.
We do that.
Is that like my family didn't understand addiction? Like her sister, for example. She can just stop. And they have that message of she just stop. Or Steve Rumler, I worked at UCare at the time, and they came in and they talked about Narcan pens. That was and
Yeah.
I talked to the family like everyone should have a Narcan pen in case you
Yeah.
overdose, and
Yep.
they're like, Chastity, you're overreacting,
Right.
and she ended up overdosing at one time in a family member's house. Or my aunt, it's just a phase. So I think people don't understand that
The deepness in
Yeah.
the addiction and the reality that it really is real.
it's real.
And that it's not, you can't just put a blanket over it.
No, it's not like cancer where you see someone with no hair,
Right.
until you can accept it a
It
little
comes
bit
in
better.
all phases.
Mhm.
all
But
descriptions.
the nature of our discussions being the need for being intrusive.
Yeah.
Because we're peeling back the layer, we're peeling back the onion, we're peeling back the covers to say, okay, this, and it can be uncomfortable at first.
Right.
But and I love your honesty in that. Like yes, no, we need that. We need that intrusiveness. So, anyways, brother, your question.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I sometimes interrupt you.
okay. So, one of my questions is, so if you look back
Mhm.
and you kind of see the whole progression and everything else, do you personally think that you could have done something different?
There's a lot of things I think I could have done different,
Right.
Like when her older sisters came and moved in with me, had her come to, but she had such a close relationship with her dad, and her dad didn't talk to her sister, so I didn't want to. I gave her that choice,
Right.
I think when she was in treatment for her dual diagnoses, they were like, "Where do you want to go? Do you want to go move with dad, or do you want to move in with mom?" And dad just got out of Hazleton and was in
Right.
his own recovery, and I'm like, that's just gonna trigger him. It's too much stress. He hasn't even been clean
Right.
2 months, and everybody wanted, even all her peers in treatment, counselors are like, you need to go move in with your mom. And she's like, I gotta give dad one more try. And of course, started drinking, and then accused her of drinking his liquor and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things where I wish I would have went and just taken her.
Right.
So I feel like she felt like she was abandoned by both me and him.
Mhm.
So the reason I ask that is because there's nothing you could have done differently.
No.
And you can't blame yourself because you are not to blame. Addiction is a beast, and it takes over,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to stop those things. So my message for you is that you did nothing wrong. There's nothing you could have done. So don't blame. Don't take on that blame. Or that guilt. And I hope that you don't. But so what was for me? I'm just kind of curious. What was the do you remember when all of a sudden you were like, she's an addict? Do you remember that moment?
I think and she lived with her stepmom. Her stepmom and her super close. And her dad. And then I think it was more when she came to live with me, and she was going to treatment. We were trying to do like a lot of mediation and with her dad
Right.
and stuff, to co-parent, and it was a really really ugly custody battle too, which didn't help with the kids either.
Oh yeah.
It was super. I mean, I was in jail constantly because of restraining orders, and I didn't do anything wrong. It actually helped me through my college. Because they let me bring my college books in.
Yeah.
Nothing to do but study. Here we go.
But I think
The benefits of jail.
Right.
yeah, I think it was when she ran off on it was Easter, and I told her she needed to do her chores, and it was April, or 420.
Okay.
And so she ran off, and then, her dad, when we were at the mediator, was said, if you would have just let her go, she would have came back. And I'm like, so you're trying to tell me that was okay for her to use when we had to go to drug court,
Right.
And
The system.
it was that time, or what one other time is when she was just cleaning my house. What kid cleans their mom's house, and does chores?
OCD?
I
Is
mean,
that obsessive?
We talked about that.
but yeah, she was getting Adderall, and I think she was using the Adderall inappropriately.
Right.
So,
So, like, aside from right now, we're speaking about her addiction, but like prior to that, like she was involved in like different community things or sports or like.
she played hockey.
okay.
Across the street from their house, they had like an ice rink, so the kids were always out there playing hockey. She played soccer. She was in Girl Scouts. They would go on trips, and
Right.
so with her and her sisters would make.
How many sisters does she have?
She has 2 older sisters,
Okay.
and then she has her baby brother who was 14 years younger than.
Okay.
So
Okay. So she was in a well knitted.
yeah,
Yes.
but she's around her own addiction too,
Right.
with her dad's drinking and stuff.
Right.
So.
Okay. Yeah.
So what kind of a person was she?
Oh my goodness, she could light up a room.
Yeah.
This is the part that makes me cry.
Right. It's okay.
Share it. The only way you can keep her, is when you speak about that. Like, speak about
No,
what she liked about her.
She did. She was just like her dad in that way, where she comes in a room and people just naturally attracted to her. She played sports. The kids, whenever there was kids around, they always ran to her to go do things. But she also had an old soul too. So jokester, funny. She was a feisty redhead. She got her name before she was born, by the way. So,
that's
Red hair, yeah, the red hair.
Very big odds on that.
I know. Her dad came home and was like, because he loved a Little Mermaid, and her older sister had a Little Mermaid outfit on, and the lady at Buffalo Wild Wings like, oh, Ariel. So, yeah, so we're naming her Ariel. I'm like, well, she has 2 middle names then, because both of her great grandmas died within a couple months from each other,
Yeah.
and I didn't want one of them haunting
I
me.
have 2 middle names too. So it's great. Adds character.
Yeah, except for when they're in trouble. It's a long
Yeah,
name
it's
to
a
yell
long
out.
name to yell.
Yeah.
So no, she lit up a room when she came around. And she was fun. She was very energetic, fun, funny.
And that, yeah, my point to that is that as we speak and as our goal is, and like sharing with people, is that you're a mom,
Mhm.
and she was your daughter, and she had siblings, and she had hobbies, and she and she lit up rooms. So it's
Mhm.
not like she was born into this where she sat down and got high with your kid and things like that.
Right.
Like you were a family, and you are a family, and that your daughter has this whole story outside of just being
The addict.
an addict,
Right.
and that she has a beautiful soul and a mother.
Thank you.
The personhood is again, it's the most important
Yes.
part,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and it's this. I'm gonna be very careful again. Like they know I like to choose my words carefully when I talk sometimes. It was this for her what started out as a hobby that ended up robbing you.
And I think
Robbing
it
her.
robbed my whole family.
It did, yeah.
Now I don't have a relationship very well with my other daughters because, like, one got a restraining order on her, and so
Yeah.
it's like I was put in the position of
Yeah.
who do I invite to Christmas, and I didn't pick.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
so now I don't talk to my one daughter.
As of
and-
right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then my other daughter, she's very much knows what addiction is, but she doesn't, because she never experienced it. But the thing is in all fairness, she experienced it with her dad, and like we talked
So
about
whether they
previously.
know it or not, it's subliminally there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't talk to like a Al-Anon thing or
Right.
anything like that. So
Do you
I-
do Al-Anon?
I did Al-Anon a long time ago, when the girls were little. So
Right.
And then through your grandma too. You were
Yeah.
mostly part of it.
So
Yeah.
growing up, and so and then working a lot with the restricted recipient program, so with a lot of addiction there too. So
What's the recipient program?
it's for insurance, so where people that are usually drug seeking, they get restricted to one doctor, one pharmacy.
Yeah, so they can't bounce around in drugs.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
Drug
yeah,
seek,
okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
And a lot
Yeah.
of it
I
too.
never heard that before.
Well,
I
because
didn't know
well,
it existed.
where I was in South Texas, a lot of times I would do that. They would jump different pharmacies, they would do
Yeah.
different doctors, get
So
the
they get
so that
multiple
their prescription
prescriptions.
was legitimate.
Yeah,
Right.
but they
And
have
they-
multiple prescriptions from multiple
Gotcha.
doctors.
When they
Right.
go to multiple ERs in one
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And a lot of it too was people that just didn't have education, so it wasn't always just
Right.
drug seeking, but the majority of it was.
Yeah.
So-
And now that's
Behavior.
where like Mayo Clinic is linking up with other hospitals.
Where they
too,
network.
where like red flags.
Right. So
Off the subject, sorry.
Right.
Okay,
No,
no, this is
no,
great information.
actually that's something I just learned, so that was great.
Yeah.
I am so I'm kind of curious. So through the addiction, what did you go through in that? You know what I mean? What was, because I see it from the addict's point because I have been through that. So I don't necessarily understand the people around me. How did that affect them or anything like that? So I would love to hear, you know, some of the, just whatever you would like to share about that. What,
Well, and I think I'd started doing a lot of tough love after her little brother was born because I just couldn't have her in the house if she brought drugs into the house and stuff like that.
by tough love, what do you mean?
Like if you're on drugs or if you have anything with you, you can't come over to my house because I have a baby brother.
Boundaries.
Right.
Yeah, I set my boundaries.
You set your
Yeah.
boundaries for
She-
you. And
Yeah. As far as like growing up, her stepmom was very, very involved, probably because I always put those boundaries up. And
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
then when she lived with me while she was in treatment, that where she would run off and I would go knocking on neighbors' houses in the middle of the night, and I seen on Facebook posts, some crazy lady with a German Shepherd's knocking on my door looking for a kid.
Gotta have the
Good
dog
for
with
you
you.
doing that.
I
Good
know.
for you doing that.
What were you thinking when you were doing that out of curiosity? Just you
Well, and the funny thing,
panic or just
no, it was like I don't think it was panic. I usually knew what area she was in. It was making sure she was safe and chasing after her because she was allowed to do whatever she wanted, and so I was constantly chasing after her. And it was actually interesting. She was like when she was clean and she was actually doing the program, and we were laying in bed one time because her and I, that was our favorite thing, would just read books. She'd read her book, I'd read my book, and we'd just sit there, you know. She's like, Mom, you know what? I know I hate you half the time, you know, because you're chasing me, but you're the only person that chases me and looks for me. So that made me.
Yeah.
Well, and that-
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's the beauty of parenting, and you know and this is what's fascinating is how much respect children have for the parents that have those boundaries.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the fact that we fight for them, even though they don't want us to fight for
At
them
the
that way.
moment, but they
Yeah,
do.
They do.
Like,
they
you
do.
don't and
They don't
everything.
want us sitting there like hounding them and like, no, you can't be at this house. You're coming home with me right now, or no, you can't go out tonight because you need to stay home. They
Mhm.
think we're being so restrictive, but in hindsight, when they look back, they're like, wow, yeah, they fought for me.
Right.
They pursued me, and that's and with kids who, and I want to broaden it more than just the addiction, but for kids who are just making trouble, you know, that's the one where the fight is a lot harder for the parent.
Mhm.
It takes a lot of
It's a lot of energy.
a lot of energy, a lot of sleepless nights.
And it's a lot of judgment too from the ones that are not open minded or mindful that it's not just one version of a family home that this happens in, you know. And not only that, you throw in the mental health. My daughter was 15 and on Molly. Some guy was selling at a local elementary school,
Mhm.
you know, to all the kids for $5 a pill. And so the chasing, the knocking on doors, the getting the judgment, the crazy ladies coming, I get that.
Right. She ran off one time, and Facebook actually helped me find her.
Thank you,
Yeah,
social
yeah,
media.
yeah.
It did. And the sheriff gave me his number, and he's like, well, the good news is she's out with a known felon, meth addict, drug dealer. The bad news is she's
Out with the known felon and drug dealer.
Right. And to be honest, he's not the smartest drug dealer because he was driving in a car with taillights out.
yeah,
You know, because
Yeah.
and the cop brought her back, and he was a rookie cop, and he's just like, her and I had tough love conversation. This isn't going to happen again. This isn't.
Right.
And I'm like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not going to argue with you, and I don't
Right,
even know
yeah,
how many
yeah,
times he's
yeah.
had to bring her back. You know, so
Right.
Yeah, where that was a reality check for him,
Mhm.
where it's like he got to get a little intake into like as much as he feels like that was the tough enough love, is that it's not a one time fix all thing.
right.
It's got to be when they're ready and if they're ready.
So
Great
I-
for being the rookie.
Yeah.
Right. So while you were doing that, did you have support or resources that were able to help you kind of chase? I guess is what you would call it. I mean, were you?
Yes and no. The police were a huge support.
Okay.
Because they seen it. She had a probation officer, and that probation officer never fell through with like giving her a bracelet. She was
Yeah.
supposed to get, to have a bracelet on. And finally, I called the on-call probation officer. I was talking to him, and I was just complaining and bitching and about the her probation officer.
Yeah.
Well, the one that I was bitching to was her husband. So things got fixed pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But but I think the police knew what I was doing in the town that we lived in at the time. You know, I remember one time pounding on this door, and my cousin was with me and her boyfriend, and I'm like, my daughter's here. I know she's here. And this big burly black dude is like, she's not here. She's not here. I'm gonna call the police on you. And I'm like, go ahead and call the police
Right.
on me. I'm like, they're gonna be happy
Please.
that I'm here versus
Yes.
them, because they come knocking on the door all the time. I go, well, your son's 17, my daughter's 14. State of Wisconsin, that's statutory rape, so I'll be the one calling the cops.
Yeah.
Well, my
Right.
daughter was home within 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
that was the hard part for me, I think, is adults were
Enabling it.
enabling
Yeah.
it and condoning it, you know.
That was one of the hard things for me too.
Mhm.
And it just as a mother, it's like you just go into mother bear
Right.
mode, you know, and you're like, you don't care whose door it is, you're gonna be there. You don't
Yeah.
care how many people are behind the door,
So,
you know.
another
So
one,
it's
same
like-
neighborhood, knocking on the door, and I had my German Shepherd. She had a Rottweiler with her, but she's like, even if my daughter, or if your daughter was here, I wouldn't tell you. And I'm just like,
Yeah, it's like why?
Why wouldn't you?
Why
but
wouldn't
you know?
yeah, but it was subsidized housing where she would run to, not to stereotype.
Yeah, no,
But
No, that's what happens.
mhm.
yeah, you know.
But yeah,
So
there was
you-
a lot of addiction in
so
that
really-
neighborhood.
Right. So really, the only support that you were getting was basically through the police department and probation.
For the most
There
part.
wasn't any other kind of resource out there that you were utilizing,
Like
because
the mentor. No, what like
what I'm saying though, this is why I'm saying this. Just is because I feel like that's kind of where everything goes, and I don't like that idea. You know, there should be more, involvement from other resources, other people in the community to be able to, help in these situations. Because when you get the cops involved, it's jail time or prison time, or probation. And, so then you're stuck in the system, and sometimes it can make, sometimes it can make it really hard.
Well,
So I'm just, that's why I'm just kind of curious about, did you find anything that can be shared as other resource? Just
I think I had to speak up. Like when she came out of inpatient treatment, they were just going to send her home, and I'm like, "You're just sending her. She's going from a controlled environment
Yeah.
where she did really well, and then just send her home." I go, "You're not going to
dump her where she was.
Yeah, I go, "What
Get
about? Aren't we going to step down and do like a day program? You
Right.
know?" And
You're
Yeah.
advocating for more restraints
Right.
as she's being set loose.
right.
Or at least
Yeah.
some structure.
Structure,
Structure, yes,
yeah,
thank you.
so
That's-
she can
that's
start
better,
to
yeah.
acclimate herself to
Right.
Yeah.
normalcy again,
Right.
But I felt that was a lacking,
Okay.
So like I remember when I was a teen, I got in trouble and I had to go to boot camp. So that's when they used to send you to work camp, and then I'd get out and you'd have a mentor, and then you'd have a guardian ad litem, and then you'd have all these things, and then slowly that all started to wither, where it became like the child was then coddled and like given lattes, and the parents were the ones jumping through the hoops instead. So then there was no accountability there for the kids, because like, oh, I'll just go sleep in a group home for a couple days. I don't have to do work camp. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. And so it was just like dusted off. Like, we're just gonna go take a vacation. So I don't know where that break had happened, but I know from when I was a teenager, it was a lot sterner when it came down to like old school, you're gonna go cut some wood, and think about what you're doing for 90 days at the
It's
least.
actually not a bad idea.
No,
I
it's
did-
great. So when
I did the
listen,
good
so then when my
Yeah.
daughter got in trouble, so when she was 15, and I'm going to court thinking, okay, she's gonna go finally get a stick into her, she's gonna go work her little tail feather off, and they're like, "Where's your lawyer?" And I'm like, "My lawyer? What do you mean my lawyer?" I'm like, "I'm not on probation. I'm not in trouble. I'm not the one that was misbehaving.
Mhm.
My daughter was a teenager out getting drunk, getting high, not from my hands though."
Right.
In the community from other people's houses who were their doctor or nurses, and they were at work, and their kids are being teenagers. They're learning right from wrong.
Right.
Well, and that's like to kind of give a little bit of like my connection.
Yeah.
So my family member, very close family member, started getting drunk at 14.
Yeah.
Because a family in the church said, well, if they're just going to go out and drink on their own, at least we can have them drinks here
their
at the house.
Yeah.
So this is church parents letting the kids drink and
Thinking they
get drunk,
can control it.
thinking they can control it. And so my loved one was consistently, regularly getting drunk since she was 14.
Yeah.
And then it went from there to other drugs at
Elevated.
college and all that kind of stuff. And so it was like, oh, wow.
Then it's still controlled. Then
But
it's
and the
college
thing is
party
too
and
is like the idea of support is the idea of like the introduction was not some stranger at
on the
school.
street or stranger
No,
danger.
and so
Yeah.
I kind of put that in there is because it can come from any corner,
Yeah.
even the corners you think are safe.
Right.
And
And
so-
that's where I was confused when I walked into the courtroom. It was like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, neglect. And I'm like, neglect. I'm like, she was in the care of another adult
Mhm.
who works in a hospital, who and it was like, they're teenagers learning to go left or right, and unfortunately nowadays most of them take a little bit of a sideways turn, but that's how they learn. But sending them to a cushy little place and then shaming the parents instead of saying, how do we fix this? How do we hold them accountable?
Right. Well, and I definitely felt shamed.
Right, yeah.
I had a family member who kind of made judgment on me, but then all of a sudden
Their kids.
they're in the same
yeah.
shoes as I am, and
Yeah.
luckily enough, that child is in recovery and has been doing well, and But, yeah.
that shame is real.
Yeah.
So is there something in the community that you have thought about that maybe would have been a little more helpful? Like, is there an idea maybe that occurred to you that like, hey,
Like, how can I get the awareness?
right? How can we do something so this doesn't occur?
I know the town that she lived in, New Richmond, Wisconsin, we lived in. It's in hindsight now, but there is a girl that went to school with her, and she obviously read the obituary and everything, and she's like, I want to start doing programs in the schools where they have speakers. When I was in school, we had speakers all the time.
I used to go speak
Yeah,
for
same here.
prevention
Yeah,
at
and
high
I'm like,
schools.
I don't
yeah.
feel like they really have that as much. I don't know, maybe because I'm not in the classroom. Maybe they
Well,
do.
everything
I have a
kinda
son, and boys
Yeah.
don't talk to their moms like girls do.
Yeah.
But I think stuff like that, getting that awareness out there
Right.
earlier than later.
Well, and making, again, peeling back and making more, getting more visual with it, getting more resources to it, and connecting. One of the things that I like to bring into these discussions too is like a minute, from a pastoral perspective.
Yes.
And for in my mind, a good church leadership, a good church structure is where a pastor's willing to get his hands dirty.
I know.
Even in there, I mean, because and they know this. We've talked about this before, but I've been up till 2 a.m. in the morning sitting
In his
with people.
pajamas.
In my pajamas. I got a phone call to go meet with somebody who was coming off of a nasty high, and they were scared out of their wits on what to do with him, and they called their pastor. Pastor, can you please come? I said, I'll be right there. So I put on a t-shirt. I had shorts on, and I go out with, I put on my slip-on shoes, and I'm in my pajamas, and I'm sitting this guy's couch aside as he's coming off this nasty high, and I was not going to leave his side until I knew he was going somewhere where he could get the help he needed.
Right.
And even to the point where I didn't carry him out. They make it sound like I carried him out. I didn't. He he leaned on my arm as I helped him to the car to make sure
Right.
he was going where he
But
needed
you
to go.
carried him in here.
I did, and that's one of those things too. Is like finding resources like that where even in local congregations and churches and pastors who can be a resource like that. Like we might not have all the knowledge.
Right.
We don't have the wisdom and how to handle it. I mean, I no idea what I was going into, except here's somebody in a situation who can't be in that situation,
Right.
and that's it. And so having that extra strength, I love how you say you're going door to door, searching her.
Yeah.
And not literally door to door. You knew.
Oh, no.
You're going down the street and you're like,
See,
but you brought you brought the dog with you because you knew you couldn't just do that in your own.
Right.
You had to have some strength.
Right.
And having again, what other resources can we use to have that strength? Yes, you're still going out there, but you're not going to do it by yourself. So yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. So I think you make a good point. Is that so as an addict or whatever, I would have never thought to reach out to a pastor.
A lot of people don't.
And the thing is that there are a lot of people out there who understand addiction and really do want to help. It's just that when you're in it, but not necessarily not in the addiction, but in in the vicinity of it and having to deal with it all, you don't always know where to reach out to. But I think some of the best no offense,
None taken.
but I think one of the best resources for people would be to reach out to other recovering addicts, or peer specialists, people who, but how do you know?
The difference is
How
there
do
is
you
like,
know where they are?
and that's exactly it. As a pastor, I don't know what circles to go look into.
Right.
Now, when they're found and they need extra help, that's where I can come in.
Right.
But locating them, what are they thinking? Where are they going to go?
Right.
You have to have somebody who can.
For
need
example,
that
I
help.
didn't even know that there was an AA place over on the other side of Garfield or whatever.
Alston.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I never knew that
it
was
is
there
still,
until just in the last.
I spend a lot of time.
Yeah, we. so I will say though that in this last week, taking on our home city as a peer support, and as Jay assisted as well in the last week, my biggest frustration is you even spoke about like you felt like you were alone in that searching and trying to get resources. So my biggest fight this week for me personally has been I've been in situations with addicts in and seeking help, but because the lack of resources, we're stuck there fighting for them and still like facing dead ends. But it's not a dead end because they still have someone fighting for them. Where like literally I sat with a woman for ever on the side of the road, and because she was commonly known and this was a reoccurring thing, it took the ambulance 45 minutes to get there, and we were a block away from the hospital, and seeing and then picked her up from the hospital and got her somewhere safe because she had no housing. She's homeless. She's been sleeping on the park bench, but she wants the help. She wants it, but it's just there's not enough of us coming together yet. And I say yet because right now we have this unity at this table right now where we have recovering addicts, we have no one that's in addiction, but families of addiction, we have mothers, we have in this right here is like a binding.
Yep.
So I got a question for you,
Yeah.
actually. So in the what you do, can you take on like some of the family members
Yes.
if they call you or whatever, if they are trying to seek help?
Yeah, so if they are seeking help for their family, for like their someone in their family, as long as the member themselves say yes, it's okay for them to speak on my behalf, and they just do a self-referral form,
Okay.
then it's game on.
Right.
But even before that step, though, I'm able to meet with the family, and we are able to get a wellness plan put together and
Right
things
on.
like that. So yeah, and so I was on the phone in my eye doctor appointment this week. Eyes dilate, like my doctor, and I'm on the phone with CPS, with Domestic Crisis Online Center, and I'm like, why is it that right now I said, thank goodness for our churches that are stepping up to the plate,
Right.
but we have so much potential here It's just everyone's like, that's not my department. That's not my department. So I merged the calls. Like I'm
Yep.
like on the eye exam table. Like just 1 second, just one more second. I'm like, look, my doctor's staring at me. Like, come on, lady, we got like 3 other appointments in back of us. You know, and I'm like, no, I'm not finished.
You're the reason my 11 o'clock is happening at 11:30.
Yes, I am that reason. But in that reasoning, we were able to get 2 people settled enough mentally, emotionally, and without drugs to where they could think better today. They may still not have housing completely. They may still not be exactly where they are, but they're one step ahead of where they were. And I may have like stung a couple people in the butt in the process of doing it, but I did it the right way because I'll be darned if I just sit back and say, well, that's not my department. I'm a peer. I'm not a...
So did you know that
See, like that wasn't my struggle because of my being a nurse and
Right,
working in
yeah.
the industry.
Yeah.
I
So
knew
you
where
knew
to go.
that.
I knew to advocate to have her go to a step down
You
program.
had
What
the
have
voice.
My struggle was everybody was embarrassed about addiction, so nobody talked about her dad's addiction, and they hid it.
Right.
You know,
So
there was
then it
one
lagged.
time. Yeah, one time we were at school because they found a note saying I'm going to go get high with my dad today. You know, and they called me in, and you could just smell the alcohol in the room. You know,
Yep.
coming out of the pores. You know, and you know. The family members are saying he's safe. He's safe. He won't do anything. You know, he's
As you're smelling it all right there.
and,
Yeah.
because I'm like, I'm gonna bring her to my mom's house right now, and they're like, no, she should go home first, you know, to her dad's and get stuff. You know, she's not in
story.
yeah, and she's not in harm's way, but he's you know always screaming and yelling. And 5 minutes after leaving the conference, can your mom come and get her right now? I'm like, well, I thought she was safe.
Yeah, and that's because that was just it's the cover.
You
Because
know.
they're not willing to release their own demons and put them on the table yet.
Right. Or
Right.
the one time I was searching for her over at her dad's house and stuff, the cop knocked on the door and her stepbrother, they weren't married, but the person that lived there
Yeah.
allowed the cop to go in and look through the house to see if they could find her. And, you know, stepmom got super angry that the cop was in the house and that's, you know, not their business to do this. And I'm like, well, she's missing. She's 15, you know.
Right, you think
so.
you'd want to aid in this. You think you'd want to help them find the way. to
Right.
do
So it was just that having other family members going out there and help find her and help. It was like they were covering up.
you sort of hit a lot of walls?
Yeah.
So
I think getting the people to not be ashamed or embarrassed of their loved one being an addict is a
Right.
struggle.
it is,
Yeah.
and that's kind of
The point
that's
of
kind of
this.
what because you know, we want to kind of shine a light on that whole idea and get everybody away from that whole idea that you don't need to be ashamed. You know, you don't need to feel embarrassed. You don't need to feel that guilt because this is just something that is, you know, I mean, if you found out that, you know, somebody had cancer, like you were talking about before, you know, it's not like you're going to be embarrassed. And I know it's hard for people to see that this is a disease, you know, but it takes over a person and it progresses to the point where you actually die from it, you know, as you well know. And so I just wish that we could get it out there so that everybody understood that that there's no reason to be ashamed of this. You know, there's no reason to shame somebody else. You know, this is a real thing. Let's talk about it. Let's understand it, and let's open it up so that there's light shining on this darkness, because that's what it is. It's a darkness, you know, and I remember that darkness, you know, and I get reminded quite frequently of that darkness, you know, and I'm glad that happens for me, because, you know, sometimes I get complacent, you know, but so I appreciate that you're trying to shine some light on this, you know, from a different perspective. A lot of times we talk about the community that surrounds the addict, and so my focus kind of is on that. You know, is there? God, I don't even know. Is there a way that you think would be somebody could do to help shine that light on, other than just like this conversation or a peer recovery or the treatment centers, you know, like, is there
Right.
something that you can see that I can't. You know what I mean? Because I don't have the
Question.
answers.
I'm like, because I guess,
Yeah.
Growing up as a kid, I remember having Dare and Degrassi
Yeah.
High
Yeah.
in high school.
I
remember. Yes.
And so and having that awareness and learning where to go,
Do you feel like that's kind of faded?
Oh yeah.
It has faded,
Yeah.
hasn't it?
I mean, they don't even do. I mean, this is back to the basics. I remember in elementary school learning how to ride a bike, being on the right side of the street,
Yes,
using
they
your
took
arms.
the, yep.
They don't even teach
Right.
that anymore. And you
Yeah.
would think,
Yeah.
just these basic life. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
because-
you,
The high school dare, the school
You know what I
dare.
blame it on? The push start on cars.
Too easy.
But I
Too
think
easy.
that-
gotta
but
go
I
back,
don't-
They're
gotta
kinda
bring
nice,
it
but-
back.
I
you
think
know?
things have gotten so soft that people don't like to have those hard conversations. Like
Yeah.
teachers can't even yell at kids
And
in
that's
school.
when the bully thing started.
Yeah.
When that bully law got passed, I remember, like, no bullying in school, but that was for like kids on kids, and then you bring it into the school where like you're talking to the counselors and they're like, oh, but I'm like, dude, my kids. I remember showing up to my daughter's cafeteria. She was getting picked on all the time. So I went and ate lunch with my daughter, and I sat down, and they banned me from coming to eat lunch again. Yeah, and that's because though these boys would come and hit my daughter, and the teachers wouldn't do nothing about it because they didn't want to be too forceful in their words, scared of the repercussions that they. And I'm like, no, you can't allow abuse.
No, that happened
Yeah.
with my son. It was on
Yeah.
Snapchat, and the principal basically said, "Well, it happened outside the school." I go, "But the threats are saying what they're going to do when he comes to school."
Yeah,
Right.
and
I made a
so
big deal of
it's
it.
just other people's fear. Their fear. It's what I mean. It's not that they're bad people. It's just that they're not willing to face something.
Well, and here's
Confrontation and-
yeah.
Yes.
And I think that has to do with all technology too.
Yeah.
People have text messages,
Yes.
But I think now that times have changed, I'm thinking using social media as a support too, because I mean, a lot of these people are younger, and that's where they go to,
Yeah.
and that's what they know.
Well, and it comes to the idea that like going back to fighting for our kids. If, why
Yeah.
why am I using that word? I'm using the word fighting for them very very specifically. When somebody goes into cardiac arrest and they're sitting there and they're laying on the floor and you got to give proper CPR. They say proper CPR, you're going to break a rib. You are going to break
awful
bones
sound.
to
save
save their life.
Right.
And they're going to feel it. They're going to come back and they're going to feel pain. They're going to. I gentleman in our church is going into surgery. They're going to crack open his chest to do a heart surgery, and so he can't do a heavy lifting. He's going to have this special brace, whatever. But the whole idea, like to save someone's life, you have got to break something. But we become so sanitized in our thinking or in our whole like over and I don't want to put the word legislation out there, but in our rules of making, we've become so overly padded that the idea of breaking something is a very negative thing. But when you look at saving a life,
Right.
we're going to do something hard that's not going to be pleasant.
Your kid may hate you for a while,
Yeah.
but they're
Yeah.
eventually going to,
I
love
remember.
you.
I remember the psych unit telling me I had to leave the psych unit because my daughter was super angry, thinking that because she tried killing herself, and she was in the psych unit and I was sent to her hold, and I come there to see her, which I was gonna leave without her because she needed to be there. She needed to be
Right.
safe. She needed to be confined. She needed that moment of
Mhm.
clarity to have to herself and where
Right.
she was safe. And I remember she got so mad she threw a chair at me because she's like, "Take me home. You can." And they told her, "Well, your mom can sign you out." And I'm like, "I will not sign her out. She's
Yeah.
not safe."
Don't
She's
say
not-
those words in front
Right,
of her.
don't say that. And she was so mad at me. And they're like, "You're upsetting her. You need to leave." I'm like, and that is where that immediate bond was. That immediate. There's too many hens in the kitchen. Where it was like she was like, "Oh, I don't have to listen." Oh,
Yeah.
okay. You don't want to sign me out, and that's where it was like, don't do that. No, she needs to be here. People need to impose that this needs to happen. It needs to break before it can be fixed.
And I think people are just so afraid of being angry. Like,
Yeah.
she got her dad's inheritance and kept giving her money, kept giving her money. I'm like, why are you giving her money?
It's feeding into that.
Well, she has nowhere to live or anything. She needs, I'm like, but she's not using the money for the things that you're that she has. Stealing was her other addiction. I mean, her stepmom and dad's house was just full of stolen goods. I mean, like tools from work sites. I mean, felony,
Yeah.
And I'm like, why aren't you turning her in?
Right, accountability
Holding her accountable for these negative actions. But they didn't want her mad at them.
and fearful. Yeah.
And I go, but if the cops come, guess who's going to jail? Guess who's getting?
Yeah.
It's your house.
Well, and that's I jokingly tell people I had a mentor who's at that
Don't be
church. His
afraid.
name was on the bottom of the sign. So there's times when like you have to be accountable, and he'd look at me. I'm on staff at that church there, and he looks at me and he goes, whose name is on the sign up there? Yours. He goes, yep. So if you do something wrong, who are they gonna come after? Are they gonna come after you? Or are they gonna come? They're gonna come after me. So you want? And like this is my pastor telling me this. I'm like, okay, I get that.
Right.
And so as a parent dealing with a child doing this, one of the helps, when you're having to do the tough love, you're having to be that tough love parent. This goes back to the community and why you need that circle around the circle. That idea that the idea that there's the addict and then you have a circle of community around the addict, but then that circle around the addict needs to have a community of reaching around them as well. But the idea is that in order for you to be strong to do impact that, you've got to have a support system for you as well. That is huge, right? Because you're going to the other part of that circle around the addict,
Right.
around around your daughter, and you're like, hey, what? We got to do this, and they're not. They're covering, they're enabling, and so you're on your own in that mess. And so you needed additional support to lean on in order to do what you need to be doing. That self-care, that additional support that says, no, you are doing everything's right. Like, yes, you feel like you're all alone, but listen, we're behind you. You're not alone. We're here for you. And having that emotional support, maybe not there in the moment with you, but backing you.
Right. I will say when she was at Hazelton, there was that, where there was that group where
And that's so good.
parents were talking, with similar things, and half the parents there were not, they were educated, well-rounded parents, and
Educated, yeah.
and so people think that addiction just comes from people that are on poverty or,
Right, and that's not true at all.
No.
Addiction is everywhere.
Everybody.
Yeah, because it
So
doesn't
Did you
focus on
actually
one thing.
see her using, or because it sounds to me like she didn't. She was, when you were around, she would take off to go get high. Did you ever actually spend any time with her where she was actually getting high? Or, not necessarily in front of you, but like
Not
at your
that I'm aware
house
of. Not that I'm aware of, because usually during that time is when she'd go MIA,
Right.
missing for a while. She'd go back to her stepmom's house and sleep it off for a day or two, and then she runs off. So I don't think any of us really see. Well, not necessarily. So she was in the hospital one time, one of the times from overdosing, and she was supposed to go straight to treatment. Well, she talked them into letting her go home first,
Right.
and
I'm bad.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, why are you doing that? No, no, no. And she was an adult, so I
Can't
can't
do
do much. They ended up going back to stepmom's house, and all of a sudden she goes running in the house and screaming at her stepmom, and stepmom's like, well, what's going on? None of your effing business, and goes running back outside with her Narcan pen. So she came home.
She knew she was.
Her friend was outside, fire department and paramedics are coming, and she's giving Narcan to her friend within 2 hours from being discharged from the hospital.
Yeah.
And so I think being that blindness too, it's happening in your house, and
Right. Because
you know,
I can
I think
tell
there's
you.
a lot of people that are blind, and she
I can
probably
tell
could
you-
have, but she
right.
didn't come to my house a lot when she started using.
I can
And
tell
you
you
don't
as
have
an
your drugs.
addict, no matter where I was going to get high. So it's probably possible that happened.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I'm curious. Well, go ahead. You first.
I was
Go
just
ahead.
gonna tell her that in the same aspect though, knowing that she left your site to go do those things, it's because she knew that you cared for her and you had expectations for her to be better.
Right.
Right.
And that right there that's good mothering. That's kudos to you for fighting for her.
Here, we might have to put this a little closer because you got kind of quiet.
I
there.
said kudos to her for fighting.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. Is that because you.
She would end her visits early too, and I knew that's what she was going to go do.
That's where her
Right.
intentions were elsewhere,
Mhm.
but at least
How did that feel when you knew that that's what was going to happen? That had to be so frustrating.
It is, and I'm just like, I mean, I guess I was happy that she didn't want to do it in front of me, and was
Mhm.
trying to be respectful,
Right,
I mean,
She knew
I
your
don't know happy is
expectations.
the right word.
Right.
But she knew
Believed?
you cared for her.
No,
I
no,
don't,
that's the
I
wrong
don't
word
know
too.
what the word
Yeah.
is,
Yeah,
but
there's no good word for that.
and I think as a parent, the hardest for me is, my husband and I would have conversations of what if it happens. I mean, he's a funeral director, so we'd have these conversations a lot.
You were open minded to the
What
fact
if?
of reality.
What if? And then our
Yeah.
conversations became when,
Right.
and that was where
That's
it
a
was
hard. That's a
Yeah.
hard transition to have your mind. To have your mind make that switch from an if this happens to when this happens. That's a very.
It's a maturing.
That's a very maturing, very difficult. I mean that. Obviously, something happened that made that line easy to cross.
Yeah, she was in a car chase through 3 cities by the cops and flood scene and screaming at me because I found out where she was and told the cops, and that was, I think, the moment where I'm like,
When?
So you
Yeah.
knew it was coming.
well, then she went to jail for 6 months, and I'm like, okay, maybe there's a chance.
You can breathe.
I actually liked when she was in jail. I mean, I would get into a fight with her attorney all the time. He was a great attorney, don't get me wrong, because he got her off of a lot of things. But at the same time, that makes him a horrible attorney because I'm like,
My mom used to say the same thing, is that when I was in prison or in jail, at least she knew I was safe.
yeah,
Because I think she had gotten to that point where it wasn't
If it was when.
it was when, and it must have been a helpless feel, because you can't change what somebody else is doing, and I just can't even imagine, just like my relation in this is that I realize the pain that I caused to those people who love me, because they were doing what you were doing. They wanted to, they loved me enough that they tried to do something for me, but it was me who had to do it in the end, and it hits me right here thinking about, the frustration and the hopelessness and the helplessness, because, and then not only that, but then you love them, so you have to chase them,
right.
and God, it's just crazy, and it just feels like there's just not enough out there. We can't save everybody, which sucks.
That reminds me of that situation that we,
Right.
the other day, where it's like, when is it time to part?
Right.
And I think
You
so many
know.
people don't even think of, they either treat just the addiction or they treat
No, it's
the
dual,
mental health.
and it's
You
dual.
gotta
You
shoot
have to do it together.
both,
It has to be a whole thing.
And at the same time, there's that fine line between coddling, enabling, and just being there.
Right.
And then being there and not enabling and not coddling, because there is that fine line, and we are addicts, and even if you're not an addict, and we're human nature, and we have a manipulating bone in our body, and that's just human. That's everyone in this world.
Well, and to put it into kind of these dots, is there's that moment where the rubber meets the road, and the one who is in active addiction must be the one who wants to get clean.
Yes, wants to.
And that's a key component, because as loved ones, we can have it in our heart's desire to get them clean, and we can fight for them left and right. And that's a really hard struggle when they don't want to reach that. But that is that. But even I mean, there is a lot of lines in there.
And I think and I don't know, she never told me, but just from being on the outside and watching, I think she wanted to be clean.
Yeah.
She just didn't like the way she felt. She wanted to numb herself because of all the demons,
Yeah.
And then she had to deal with the loss of her dad, which I was hoping that would do one or the other. Because
Right.
I mean, he died on the front stoop from drinking, and so I
Yeah.
thought maybe that would be the rock bottom, for
Yeah.
lack of better words.
Oh look,
but-
someone I love just passed away
and I
in
knew
the
it
middle
do,
of it.
yeah, I knew it would do one or the
Yeah.
other, but
Oh no.
Well,
We have a tendency to be like, okay, this is as far as I'm gonna go.
and then there's
you
like
hit
10
that.
stories
Yeah,
down
and
lower.
then you hit that, and you're like, well, maybe here. No, maybe here.
right.
Yeah, and like even in that, when you spoke about wanting it, even when they want it sometimes, and they're willing to want to reach out for that, even there's intrusions from that fear of the ifs and the maybes, and did I just make the right choice? And so, like you said, you felt like, she wanted it. It's just getting past that uncomfortable, when you get a haircut and it's you're
Right.
like, you're gonna hit that ugly stage, and then you're like, oh, I really want this haircut, but
wear the hat.
yes, and so it's just knowing that you're gonna have to go through that ugly stage where you're like, do I risk this? I want this, but do I risk this? And we see that every day in recovery. We see that every day in not recovery. We see that every day in just people with mental health, and sometimes they want it. It's just they feel like there's not enough grounding to keep them there.
Right. And I think sometimes they don't want it to be their identity. Like that was the thing I knew with her. Like she didn't like to come to family get-togethers because then everybody's like, "Oh, how's treatment going? How's your recovery doing?"
Saying, "How'd you do today?"
Yeah, it's like her addiction became her identity versus
I walk in a room and I'm like, "Look, I have spots and I own them.
Right.
You can love them or you can just walk the other way, but they're here."
Yeah.
Right, and that's actually a good point, because when you are in recovery, you own it, because that is who I am. I am an addict, but I'm also a son. I'm also a father, a grandfather, a grandson. Like I have different, and so it's important that that you show that part too to everybody else, like
her liking hockey,
right?
Her,
like
these are
she
or
lit
just,
up.
how are you doing?
Yes.
Right.
She's like, I just want to get away from it and just be a granddaughter, be a daughter.
Right.
So it's like
there's this moment where they want to go back to be there's a moment where they want to go back to being the child again.
Yeah. And I know the people that are asking this, I know their intentions are probably well meant.
Right. It's just how
just don't you're using it as their identity.
Yes,
I feel,
Yeah.
Well, it's like the young man I'm mentor. He calls me one of his mentors, and I love him a bit. And he's a great young man. For me, he's a buddy. I give him that identity. I don't look. Yes, I know. I've been with him in the deepest, darkest when he's coming off of those nasty highs, and I look. You're my friend. I look at you like a son. I give him that identity. Like, this is what I'm here for you. Like, when I go and I see him, I don't ask him, hey, how's the recovery doing? I don't ask him how's all these things, because I know he's struggling with it, and I know if I need to call him out on something, I don't need him to tell me. I can see it, and so I'm there as his friend. Right. That if he needs something strong, I'm going to do that. But he won't get anywhere with me. That if I'm going to sit there and be like, hey, buddy, I'm not leaving your side until you go where you're supposed to be right now, and and it's developed a really great relationship between us.
Bond. Yeah.
But it really is, and it's like, I talk to him maybe once or twice a month, maybe, but that's the relation we developed. But it's having that boundary has enabled me to speak a lot to him that normally would not have been there. But it's choosing to look at them as a person is what's made the biggest impact.
Right.
And so that's huge.
I think that's kind of what any addict really wants.
It's just someone to see them for them,
right?
And just their faults.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I know when I wrote the obituary too. Back to I went off subject. Back to being embarrassed.
We
whatever.
like scrum moments.
Sorry, I don't know why that
all rounds in.
I mean, I wanted this to be known that she was a person. That's first and foremost. Second is, I want her life to mean something, and if that obituary can help one person,
Right.
But I know there's certain people that probably were upset that I posted or that I wrote this.
You were real open,
because
honest.
That's talking about our family, which is private,
And the thing is that that is a big problem.
The blanketing.
Yes, we don't want, I don't want to see that anymore. I wish I could, just be like everybody, like, hey, it's an addiction. It's okay. Every family has somewhere they have that in their life.
Well, even in the hospital systems, we ran across it the other day where it was like came in for anxiety.
Right.
No, and that wasn't said at all.
Right.
And that was the easily masked underlying state.
Right. Because everybody wants to close their mind to it, and I don't understand why, because we are people, and we can be good people and we can be bad. I've been on some real dumb stuff, I'll watch it.
Good
Yeah.
job.
You know,
Good job.
and I've taken from the community a lot in my past.
And now you're giving back.
And yeah, but in recovery, you start to, give back. And I'm sorry that your daughter did not get to see that end of it, because I bet you she would have flourished.
Yes.
But I I I kind of want to go to something that he was talking about. So he had that personal relationship, and he was kind of like with the addict, and he sees him for more. But the problem is that, like you said, it's the other people. They just see the addict. And it's a destructive thing. So I understand why people focus on that. But if you're gonna focus on it, focus on a way to help,
Yeah.
Right.
not to shame, not to make somebody feel small because your mom gave you $20 knowing you're probably gonna go get
Right.
high,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Here's the best thing. I want to anchor this in the Bible. It tells us all have sinned and fallen short. So I might not be an active addict. My struggle might be something else.
Right.
But that worth that other person has, and choosing to look at them, and like they have a worth. They're worth something. There's value there.
Right.
Look at that person, and to sit there and I want to be really careful. I'm not going to sit there and I'm not identifying with that person. I can't identify with them.
We're all unique.
But I'm just as dirty.
Yeah.
I'm just as messy. I'm just as and from that moment of realizing that, hey, we have different struggles,
Right.
but we're both struggling. Okay,
Pain is pain.
now I'm not gonna sit there and self-righteously judge you and be like, oh, I'm not gonna touch you because you're messy.
Right.
No, I'm messy too. I might be different kind of messy. You might be colored in a bunch of yellow paint. I'm in red paint. Great, we're both painty. Let's go and let's.
Yeah, let's take a painting picture.
And that's a good point. That's actually a really good point, because we have to relearn. We have to relearn how to think about some of these things, because until you've actually gone through it, it's hard to see it sometimes, and it's hard to think about what that really means, the addiction and the struggles that go on and intertwine, but it's possible for people to think in a different way, and and to see that, okay, the addiction is messy, but there's light, we're the light right here. Yeah. We're trying to tell you that you can recover, and chastity doesn't have to, there has to be a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There has to be a purpose. There has, and I would love to drag that out of you. What is that purpose?
Right.
What is it that you want to see, and how can I help to get you there?
How can we help get you there?
Right, because that's actually that was my next question is, what do you think I could do to help whatever that vision is for you? What you want is to get the information out there. What exactly would you like me to do? Because I'll follow through.
I guess I wasn't prepared for this question.
It's a heavy one.
It is. I don't know. Just letting people know that, there's just someone there, that you're there to be their friend,
Right.
just to be there, call me whenever, it's a hard, it's a hard question.
And
It is a hard question.
sometimes it's just like we do so simply at a meeting, which isn't so simple. It's some of the greatest life-saving techniques. It's just leaving your number and saying, hey, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
If you need it and when you're ready.
Right.
And even if you're not ready and you just want to test the water out, here's my number. For those moms that have lost other children, hey, I'm here if you just want to chat, if you don't feel like, or for us, it's like, hey, I'm struggling.
Right.
And the fun part, again, two things. First is this: Paul is addressing to the church, and he's telling these believers. He gives this whole list of just awful behaviors, and then he adds this. He goes, "And such were some of you," saying that you can be changed. Like you can come out of this mess. You now don't lose sight of what you once were, but you're also not back there anymore.
Right.
So there is hope to come on the other side of whatever the mess was. And the other part too is the Bible tells us we overcome by the working of Christ on the cross and our testimonies. our stories. And if I'm going to keep my story hidden, if you're going to keep your story hidden, who's not going to receive the benefit of that?
Right.
When we keep our junk hidden and we keep it all like we're not showing what our struggles are, we're not showing what we're having to overcome, we're not showing the skeletons in the closet, then the people who need that help, the people who need to know that they're not alone, they're not going to get that.
Right.
And so by us opening up the closets, showing, hey, this is my dirty laundry, this is the skeletons. Was it pretty? No, it's not pretty. It's a really dark place, and these are hard memories sometimes. But being able to share those and say, look at where we're at now. Look at what we're trying to do now. And the whole idea is like, yes, in the moment you did everything you could in the moment that you knew how to do.
Mm-hmm.
Hindsight makes it 2020.
Right.
Hindsight's like, well, I could have done this, or I could have shoulda, coulda, woulda. Don't shoulda on yourselves is how he puts it. Don't do that to yourself. But see, here's the benefit. See, now you're ahead of the game, and you know all those things that you could have done better.
Right.
Okay, don't hold that on yourself. But when there's somebody who is like in the middle of the fight behind you, hey, I got a story. I got something to share with you. And now you're taking what your testimony is and saying, here's how we went through it.
Right.
Here's what I know now. I wish I would have known then. And I'm telling you, here you go. And you're able to take that and your stories, our stories, all this stuff that we get to bring to this table and say, okay, we're going to pass it on to the next person here. Here's the information. Here's what you can learn from it, grow from it. So here's the resources. We wish we would have had this earlier, but we have it now.
Right.
Here you go.
So did you? Maybe a stupid question, I guess. But so when she passed, did you kind of shoulder this on yourself? Did you? I mean, were you able to reach out and?
My husband was there.
Okay, that's good.
And in defense, it's probably harder for him, even though he did raise her, but he had an identifier.
Right.
And then he had to go get her, and then he insisted on embalming her.
Oh gosh.
So he did everything. The one thing I did that I had to do was curl her hair one last time.
Oh.
So that was the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know. Was that your question?
Yeah.
No,
It was.
There was
No, it's okay.
Because I was, yeah.
I mean,
I was curious because it sounded like your family was kind of still like, you know. So I'm glad that you had somebody to shoulder that with, you know. And anytime that you want to
and
reach
the community was a huge support. Like all the people
Really?
that showed up to her funeral. Father Kurt, I'm not even Catholic, you know.
good for the community.
Right.
But I mean,
Yeah.
there were so many people like I've never even met before that came. The people from the cities, people that were in treatment with her.
Because we build these bonds, and so you can be you're that one
So-
in this crowded room when there may be another mother or another parent or another
Yeah.
individual struggling.
Yeah.
You have that ability to turn and look at them and say, I understand.
So yeah, so
Actually-
there was a community kind of surrounding.
Yeah. A good friend of mine going through a divorce. I mean, we were out to dinner. I'm like, I'm glad your life sucks right now, so I can get to make my mind something else. You know? But sometimes you need distraction.
You did no such as a pastor, when I have the funeral homes here at the church, we have to be very careful because we're dealing with such heavy things that our humor can be very morbid. And we're laughing and we're being joyful. And like we gotta be really careful because the family comes in the morning and then they see us in the corners just cracking over some jokes.
Right.
Because what we're doing is so heavy that we need to do something to lighten just the load we carry.
Because that's not just the load you carry; you carry multiple loads.
You carry multiple, and when you're in that moment, it's very, very heavy. And so having somebody go through a heavy moment and being able to share that is again that idea of carrying things together is so important.
And I wanted you to know that at any given time, you can reach out.
Yes.
I'll be here. I'm sure Victoria will, and
Yes.
absolutely Ryan is great when you need
And
something.
we can talk about spots off.
And and it doesn't have to be, you know what I mean, but any questions or any.
I think just one of the things
thoughts?
that helped me the most is like where there's somebody that's in treatment now or in recovery, and like there's comments like, you know what, I never thought about my parents. I read
Yeah.
this obituary,
Right.
and I didn't even think that I'm gonna, my behavior, my addiction is gonna leave my parents without me.
Right.
Like it gave them a different perspective, and
Yes.
hearing those kind of things, I think gives me
Strength.
So
strength.
look,
You
look,
know,
look,
Right
look,
on.
at, look at what
Did
you've
you read the
accomplished.
obituary?
I
Oh,
have.
that?
Yeah.
No,
Oh, I don't know. Is that okay? Can she read the obituary?
I think there's, if you wouldn't mind.
If you would like to, I
It's
would.
up to
We'd be
you.
honored if you
Or-
if you'd be
Be
willing.
honored to hear you.
Right.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, so we'll do
We're
this.
still gonna put it on.
Yeah, of course.
We're gonna do this if you can read the obituary for us, and then we'll close on this note too, because it is that time we need to wrap
Okay.
up.
Right.
But if you can read this for us, and then we'll just give a good closing after you're through with that, and I think that would bless people.
Beautiful.
Dollar store.
They're beautiful.
Our contacts. That's my secret.
I forgot my glasses at home, so I
Yeah,
run to the dollar
character.
store.
I just pretend.
I'll skip the first paragraph because that one is just talking about what it is.
Can
But
you say?
Her
Can-
name.
Yes.
Ariel Lois Lucille Talbot. She passed away at the age of 24 on November 30th. Our beautiful, sweet Ariel passed away. I guess I never read it out loud before. After a lengthy struggle with addiction. Although her death was unexpected, we had feared for years that the addiction would eventually take her life. Her family would like to speak the truth about her struggle. Silence would only mean her death was in vain. If one person's life can be saved by sharing her story, we will continue to share it. We know the pain of her suffering. We know the pain of our suffering. We know that there's many other families dealing with the destruction of addiction. Speaking the truth, no matter the circumstances, is difficult. However, it can mean the difference between life and death for a sibling, a child, parent, friend, or spouse. Ariel struggled with an addiction to drugs for most of her life. Drugs offered an escape for demons she felt tortured by. She attempted to fight those demons numerous times and would be successful for a while. Sadly, they would eventually creep back in. I have to get this sniffle.
It's okay.
It is impossible to capture a person in an obituary, especially someone whose adult life was largely defined by her drug use. To some, Ariel was just a junkie. She wasn't seen as the beautiful, fun, smart person she was. She was only the drug and behaviors. That is a huge loss for them. Ariel was energetic, loving, hilarious, and spunky. She was resilient and strong in many ways. She wasn't shy, that's for sure. She would approach and chat with anyone. When you were in her company, you were mesmerized by her charm and never wanted to part. Most didn't know or see that she was a cousin that enjoyed horsing around. She loved playing games, fishing, and played football. People didn't know she was a granddaughter who loved to spend time with family at her grandparents' cabin. People did not see that she was a sister who adored her siblings. People didn't view her as someone's daughter whose parents wished for her to be healthy again. In society that fails to see a person and only sees an addict, we are failing the disease. Ariel befriended counselors, social workers, doctors, therapists, and law enforcement who advocated for her and supported her in her recovery. She was adored as a daughter, granddaughter, sister, cousin, niece, and friend. Ariel was a gift. Ariel had an unbreakable bond with her dad. He passed away in 2018. After his death, she tried to get sober several times, but relapsed on many occasions. The loss of her father was unbearable for her, and she was truly heartbroken. Ariel would spend several days with her stepmom. I'm leaving her name out just for you guys to see. As her childhood homes, at her childhood home, sober on and off throughout her addiction. Spending time with Bonnie, who she adored more than anyone, brought Ariel much joy and comfort. Bonnie was always there for Ariel and loved her dearly. Ariel had a special love for her baby brother, Nathaniel. He loved when Ariel would come over. She would babysit him and they'd do silly things together. Like wear pull-up diapers. That wasn't in there. Whenever she saw him, she would light up and give him the tightest of hugs. And that was the hard part during the funeral was him. As her mother, I struggled with guilt. of not being there because of boundaries that I had to set for my own well-being. However, I'm extremely grateful that the last time we'd spent the day together, it was full of laughs. We spent time reminiscing, and I was extremely proud of her. I will always love you more than all the green M&Ms. During the last few years, her addiction has brought incredible darkness, and this darkness manifested itself as each unimaginable thing she did in the manner of her disease increased the pain and shame. We always hoped and prayed that she would overcome this disease. Her addiction stalked her and took her from us. We would give anything to have her back, but we know that the disease and darkness would continue to stalk her and not let her go until she was gone. Our hearts will forever be broken, but we pray she's finally at peace. And then Ariel survived by me, her stepdad Josh, stepmother Bonnie, siblings Marissa, Callie, and Carter, Nathaniel, Grady, Patrick, Sadie, and grandparents Kathy and Rick, Mike, Don and Peg, and step grandmother Barbara, Jenny, and lots of nieces and nephews who will miss her very much. Let's see. If you are struggling from addiction, please know that every breath you take is a fresh start. Know that hundreds of thousands of families who have lost someone to this disease are praying and rooting for you. Know that we believe with all our hearts that you can and will make it. It is never too late. If you're reading this with judgment, educate yourself about the disease because that is what it is. It's not a choice or a weakness. Chances are very good that someone you know is struggling with it and that person needs and deserves your empathy and support. If you work in one of the many institutions through which addicts often pass, rehabs, hospitals, jails, courts, and treat them with compassion and respect they deserve, thank you. If instead you see a junkie, thief, or a liar instead of a human being in need of help, consider a new profession. We take comfort in knowing that Ariel is surrounded by light, free from the struggle that haunted her. We would have given anything for her to experience that freedom in this lifetime. Our grief over losing her is infinite, and now so is she. And then I just put in lieu of flowers, please consider donations to the Steam Rumler Hope Network, providing hope for those with addiction and fight against the opioid epidemic. I think that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You
need
If- If
Yeah.
you want to know why we do these videos, why do we have these conversations?
This is why.
This is why. This is very powerful. This is very important. We will have in the description a link to the obituary itself, as well as a link to the Hope Network as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for spending your day and listening to this conversation. God bless you. Have a great day.